Hi team, welcome to 10 Talks. Today's conversation is with a dear friend of mine and a huge joy just to be able to share her with you and the gift of her journey. So JoAnne, thank you for being on our 10 Talks today. And before we start, I got to get a shout out to our partner. She is ill, and so power of team, Kathy, we are thinking about you and we are here for you and we miss you already. So just wanted to make sure that we make sure that she's well taken care of. So JoAnne, welcome to our podcast. And most importantly, we want to hear from you about how women win and what your journey's been about. So share with us just the power of your story.
Oh, man, how women win. I love that statement because that's really what I'm hoping we can help accomplish together. So my story begins, I'm going to go all the way back to when I was 5, and I was in a car accident that could have changed the entire trajectory of my life. I was always a sporty kid. I was always really active and enthusiastic and very independent. In fact, rumor is my first word outside of mama, dada was self. So I like doing things and I like to know that I can do things by myself. This car accident was really impactful. It left me with only 25% of use of my right arm. And I was prevented from doing a lot from an athletic perspective, but I also missed half of kindergarten. Now, the good thing about missing half of kindergarten was I became a prolific reader. I loved sitting around and reading, but when I got back to school, I kept thinking about what can I do? Everybody was telling me what I couldn't do. So I looked for the power from within and I thought, I think they're wrong. I think there's stuff I can do. And that's how figure skating found me. At a birthday party, and I put my feet in those skates. I got on the ice and I thought, okay, there's no balls flying at me. There's nothing I'm hanging from. It favors people who are smaller stature, which I've always been. And I found my calling. I mean, that's where I started to find my power, because I saw that if I put effort towards something, even though I would fall and fall and fall, because that's how you learn to land on one foot, I would get back up again. And there were no bruises that kept me down because I knew that I could keep going. So that was really the start of my journey. And I competed as a figure skater for all of my childhood and teenage years and used the skills I learned there to build into the next phases of my life.
Yeah, what a gift. We talk so much about whatever we choose or whatever chooses us in childhood, how it really just opens our eyes to the power of possibilities. And it also gives us an opportunity to see what we're good at, what we're not so fabulous at, and start to really stand in our power. And you've done such a beautiful job of owning what you want and going for it. That is absolutely one of my favorite. You've got many, many traits, but I just love your spirit of I can do this, or I will figure out how to. And I think you give great hope to everyone that has really the gift of working with you or meeting you or just connecting with you, to be able to be encouraged and inspired. And I know that you are on this great journey right now. You've got a brand new product and program and movement, I would call it, that's happening called Athlete's Voice. And I definitely want to talk about it. Before you got to Athlete's Voice, I know there's been these really pivotal moments where you've been challenged about who you are, what you value, and what's important to you. And as a woman, really finding your way to win. Tell us about some of those moments and what they taught you.
They happen every day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've served in executive leadership roles with 2 of the most well-known brands in sports. I spent a decade with the San Francisco 49ers and a few back-to-back seasons, championship seasons, with the Golden State Warriors. They were amazing organizations to work with and work for, and the platforms that were presented through those gave me a chance as the leader in the philanthropy space, running the charitable efforts for the teams, to think about not only what the team could stand for, what the individual athletes could stand for, and where my values aligned with that, and how to help people find their inner voice and bring them out. But, even through that journey, there were moments when I would stop and I would think, is this my true voice? Is this my authentic voice? Am I doing the best I can with the gifts I've been given? And for many years, it was yes. And then at some point it became, I'm not sure. And then through loss and through just re-examination, I lost my father to Alzheimer's about a little over a year ago. He had younger onset, and his voice was so important to me. And also his voice was important in his leadership roles as the head of Special Olympics International for a few years and through a corporate career. What I saw was a man who opened doors and helped people to walk in, who used his voice to speak up for those who couldn't speak. And I felt this calling to just continue that journey for him. So when his voice was silenced, what could I do to keep rolling it forward? So 2 years ago, I launched Oliver+Rose. Oliver+Rose is a firm that specializes in amplifying voices to inspire change and bringing together elite athletes, corporate brands, and nonprofits so that together they can create momentum around movements. And athletes' voices is an offshoot of that. So that's the thing that makes me want to jump out of bed every morning, get to work, think about what's possible. Even today, I've had 4 conversations where I feel so alive through it that I know that I'm finding my power and my purpose from within. But this hasn't been an easy journey. I have 2 kids. I have a 14-year-old daughter, a 12-year-old son. When I was pregnant with my son, I was working in the NFL, and I was the only person who happened to be pregnant in the front office at the time. And I found myself navigating around assumptions about what I was capable of or incapable of. I also found that having a partner who was very supportive of my aspirations professionally was of value. But I also needed to stop and think through, like, what was I balancing at all times, and how much of that could I reveal, and how much of that did I need to keep on the down low so that I was allowed to be in the spaces that I knew I belonged, where I knew I belonged.
Well, the gift is times are changing, which is a huge victory dance, right? For all of us that have been on the journey, it's very exciting. And when we step into new, as exciting as it is, there's also not a playbook really written for it. And we have had a playbook written for women that has been about really kind of what we can and can't do. And we've thrown that away. We've said, you know what, we are going to figure out what really works best for us. And that's the journey we're on, is that we feel like we've been listening more to maybe what men have told us, or our family has told us, or society has told us. And what a gift to just explore, well, wait a minute, if we really connect within to us as women, knowing that we know ourselves best, how can we set ourselves up for success in partnership with men and everyone? I mean, that's the beautiful thing. This isn't against, this is for everyone, really owning their power. And so as you think about your journey, how did you find somewhat the courage, or just the tenacity, I think would be the best word, to own your power and then go for it?
You know, when things feel like they're falling apart,
Mhm.
you can allow yourself to kind of go down into that vortex, or, and in my case, I can hit those lows, but then it's, what are the building blocks to help me get back up?
Right.
So, you know, Carlette, as you were talking, you made me think about my grandmother for a moment. My grandma, her name was Rose, so that's part of the name of my company. But she lived to be 97 and a half, and she was a spunky, opinionated, spirited, brilliant, redheaded woman who had been through the Depression and been through so many different things. But when she was about 90 and my daughter was a baby, I asked her one day, I said, you know, Grandma, if you could have been anything, if she hadn't had to drop out of high school to help support a family business through the Depression, if you could have been anything, what would you have been? And I think I expected her to say, oh, a lawyer, or, you know, something like that, because she was great at negotiating and arguing. And she looked at me and she said, you know, Jo, I don't envy you girls today, because you're being told that you have infinite choices, but you aren't being given the resources to be able to support those choices. And that was the hardest part, as you talk about harnessing the energy, the power, and the belief in yourself. And I felt for many years like I needed to beg to get the seat at the table. And then I had this realization that I had a seat at the table, but I was holding a specific seat. And And if I leaned to my left or leaned to my right or went across the table and tried to offer my perspective or my insights, it felt most of the time like it was, that's adorable, Jo. Now go back to your seat. Like, we don't need you to lean in on these other areas of business development. But yet I knew I was capable. And so when it got to the point where my filter was being tested, because I'd sit in the room and I think, you know what? I know that I have something to offer to this conversation. And I had the momentum that came from some of the women with whom I'd had an opportunity to work, but who I admired so much. I started to think about what was possible. And one of my clients and a great, great friend, Eric Reed, shared with me when I was kind of at that moment of I might or I might not go out on my own. He said to me, JoAnne, you just need to find a way to say yes. Saying no is really easy. Saying yes is really scary, but you have it inside you. And his belief in me was really important, but it reminded me of a woman I had the great opportunity to work for, many layers down, but for at the very beginning of my career, Eunice Kennedy Shriver, the founder of Special Olympics. And Mrs. Shriver, that was her philosophy in life, was a tiny little woman, and people would say, you can't, or it shouldn't, or that's not possible. And she'd be like, let's see if we can't find a way to make that happen. And when you've heard that enough times, you start to think like, you know what, this brain of mine actually knows how to problem solve and knows how to navigate. And I'm going to bet on myself right now. So I did. And it's scary. And I would say financially, it's probably the scariest, because I was in places and spaces where the financial rewards could be great, but I didn't feel alive. And it's funny because when you start to think about, that old adage about find the thing that you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Yes, but, and I say but versus and, yes, but you have to support a family. There are things you have to do.
Right.
So I approached it more pragmatically. And at the center of the logo for my company is a symbol called the Ikigai, which has really been a tremendous guidepost for me, because it talks about doing what you love, what the world needs, what you're good at, and also what you can get paid to do. Because unless we're independently wealthy, we still need to find a way to make a living. And so once I started to align those pieces and realized that the world definitely didn't want me to be an opera singer at the Kennedy Center because I can't even sing happy birthday. Nobody was going to pay me for that. And I should keep that to my private times, that I needed to jump in and figure out what it was that I did really well, that the world needed, where people would want to pay me for it, and where I would have just a blast doing it. And it turned out that that was my own company. I also put parameters around it. Now, I didn't know a global pandemic would hit, because January 2020 was when I launched my company. But I told myself, you know what, I'm going to give myself 2 years. And I put aside funds. I put aside some of it. Like, fortunately, when you're sheltering in place, there's no opportunity to go on vacations or really spend money unless it's online. But it's been a little over 2 years, and I'm really happy with where it is now and where it's going. But I bet on myself.
Well, and what an incredible combination. I love that. And so let's talk about economic independence, because I think that's so valuable for women, is that we are told we can do anything. Love your grandma's words of wisdom. Love that. How do we really bridge or marriage that economic independent component with resources? Because we can think we're of great value and we would want people to pay us. How did you make that happen?
That's the hardest part. And I mean, thank goodness for you, Carlette. You have, for the last decade, reminded me of my value, even when I didn't see it myself. And it's hard. I still find it really hard to ask for what I deserve or what I've earned, because I'm afraid that others might push back and say, I don't deserve that, or I haven't earned it. And it's scary, because it's a very, very vulnerable place to be. That being said, I have found that if I can establish from the very beginning, from the earliest of conversations, this is what I do for a living. That's a statement I use a lot. So earlier today, I was on a call with somebody. He was asking me for some guidance around an issue. And I said, look, I have a ton of ideas around that. I'm happy to share what I've done with others, but this is what I do for a living. And it would be great to work with you.
Yeah.
So I'm still leaning into like my natural personality, which is, hey, yay, let's go do this. So I don't have to like, here's your invoice. I'm walking in with it. But it's tough because people, and I use that word on purpose, tend to want to put community relations, charitable giving, philanthropy as isn't that adorable? Let's put a pink fuzzy heart around it. When in truth, I know that businesses move forward when they are philosophically aligned with the things that matter to people. And when we look at the generation that's coming up, they are looking at purpose-driven companies and holding them accountable. And so what I do for a living is I'm providing a place in a space for companies and athletes and influencers to explore how they can do the right thing and do it in a way that helps their business thrive. And so when I say it like that, it helps because it's tying it back to a business objective. Now, personalizing it doesn't work. It never has. And so walking in and saying, I need this because of this lifestyle or because I live in an expensive, I have kids, like, no, none of that. Like, in fact, I had my daughter negotiate with me when she was helping me out with some work. We actually wrote a contract. She negotiated an hourly rate. She's 14. So, but we both signed the contract and we agreed to terms, and there were deliverables. And it was, all of this was because I want Kira to know that one day when she enters the workforce, that she can advocate for herself. So I pushed back on stuff and I said, I don't know, Kira, I mean, is that really that hard? And her response, which was so perfect, was, it isn't difficult for me, but I know that it's something that you need me to help you with.
Beautiful.
And again, as we're showing our value, it's not saying I'm better than you, or it's saying, I feel like I can augment whatever it is that you have because I bring something different to the table. And I try to bring that back to those who work with me or for me as well, is I'll say, I need you. I mean, I was on a phone today with a photographer, one of my favorite humans in the world, Carol Lloyd, famous photographer for the 49ers. He's coming in to shoot this event for Athletes' Voices. And I said to him, I need you to capture something for me because this is so important. And my shoddy iPhone skills are not going to do it. So, because he does bring value and I want him to know that we honor that as well. So I think it works both ways. It's lead with the purpose and sharing with people that you see their value, but also remind people of the value that you bring that's unique. And going back to that ikigai, what is it that you can uniquely bring that is unique, that's additive, instead of sharing the thing that everybody has, or the impediments that we all have that keep us in a place of discomfort financially, because folks aren't going to give you something just because you're smart and you're capable and you're adorable and you have like freckles and they like freckles and they think you're nice and whatever. I mean, they aren't. I mean, my kids gave me this award, but most people don't go to Hollywood Boulevard and get you a $2 statuette to tell you that they love you. You have to prove it and earn it and own it. And if we go back even to my mother and her generation, my mother didn't have a credit card or a bank account in her own name. And when she was no longer married and she tried to get a car, she was denied for every car until, it's funny, Volvo took a chance on her. And she got this horribly ugly purple car that she loved and nobody else loved. But she was brand loyal from that day on because they saw that this was a woman who was capable of making the payments, even if she didn't have a traditional credit history. Because if you're a woman who hasn't had your credit card in your own name. So my daughter and my son already have bank accounts in their names. They already have, debit cards in their names, because I would never want them to end up in a place where they're so dependent on the person who provided for them financially that they aren't seen as a trustworthy investment.
Right. Well, the value of investing in ourselves is beautiful. You articulated it in such an inspiring way. So as you watch your film and just kind of think about your life, what would you say are your words of wisdom to our women on how to set themselves up to win?
I'm going to channel, I'm using words of wisdom, but they're coming from my father. Something he said to me when I was very young was, so if you're scared about doing something and you feel those butterflies, what you need to do is just train those butterflies and you'll feel yourself getting stronger. But to build out on that a little bit more, the other thing was he would say to me when I was scared to ask for something I wanted, he'd say, well, Jo, where are you if you don't ask? And my response would always be, well, I'm right where I am right now. Yep. Where are you if you ask and the answer is no? Well, I'm right where I am right now. He'd say, yep, nobody's going, you're not going negative. You don't go back in time. You don't go backwards. Where are you if the person says yes? And I was like, well, I've achieved what I set out to get. And he's like, bingo. So as long as we remind ourselves that there's nothing to lose when you're prepared and you're articulating what you need and want and why, then why wouldn't you go for it if the worst you can do is stay exactly where you are?
Love it. So team, there you go. Great words of wisdom. And JoAnne, what's been such a gift is how you have brought so many of your relationships into our conversation. And I think that is such a winning strategy for women, for the world, really for people that I really want to focus on as women, because sometimes we're not sure how to be for women in a way that we elevate ourselves and others. So you've done a beautiful job. I know you're on mission to really elevate everyone that you have the opportunity to connect with. What would you say, what advice would you give to women to really help them honor their relationships?
I'm very loyal. And I had a mantra a couple of years ago. I said, I don't need people who suck the life out of me or just, are negative in general. But those who have been additive, I keep them close. And when I say I'm going to be there for somebody, I mean it. I think being true to your word engenders that same loyalty back. And one of the most emotional moments I've had this week was when an athlete I adore told me that he was having an event changed because he was going to be there for me to support an event that I'm hosting. And he is a very high profile individual. He is a very kind individual, but it was that moment that I felt so supported. And I thought to myself, I've been there for him and he knows it. And he knows that I will continue to be there for him. And so in turn, it's not that you're doing it because of what you're going to get in return, but just being consistent in that really creates this wave of support so that when you need it, you can call on it. I'm true to my word. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And I mean it. And I try to be authentic and open as well. I think that's crucial. The more vulnerable we allow ourselves to be, the more real we are and the more comfortable we are in our own skin. And so kind of like that little girl at 5 years old who was, I was injured, I was recovering, I was told these things I couldn't do. They had to shave my head at the time because I had to have some surgery. And I was always known for having this hair. And I thought, I get to define who I'm going to be.
Love that.
So I take it back to that. Who are you when you're stripped of all the things that you think you're supposed to be, and you bring it back to the basic and you just say, do I love who I am? And do I love the people around me? And do I feel like they love me right back?
And are you able to give that to our world in a way that helps support you financially and really elevate your whole being versus it just being like you're great in one dimension or great at home, but you don't think you can be that great at work? So team, what a gift this conversation has been. I know, I'm very grateful to you, JoAnne, and just the courage that you've had and the courage that you continue to give everyone. And team, it's up to you. Go out this week and figure out how to win your way and continue just to find your way and find joy in the journey of discovering how you're going to win your life. Thank you, JoAnne.
Thank you, Carolyn.